For decades, the question of nuclear weapons in Iran has been at the center of global diplomacy, regional tensions, and international security debates. To understand why so many countries work to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, we must look at a web of concerns: issues of non-proliferation, regional stability, global security, and the risks of an arms race in one of the world's most volatile regions. First, consider the international framework governing nuclear weapons, the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, or NPT. Signed in 1968 and now joined by nearly every nation on Earth, the NPT is built on three pillars: non-proliferation, disarmament, and peaceful use of nuclear energy. Under the treaty, 5 countries, the United States, Russia, China, France, and the United Kingdom, are recognized as nuclear-armed states. Other countries, including Iran, have pledged not to develop or acquire nuclear weapons in exchange for access to peaceful nuclear technology, and a general commitment by the nuclear-armed states to pursue eventual disarmament. Iran has long maintained that its nuclear program is peaceful, focused on generating electricity and advancing medical research. However, suspicions have persisted, fueled by periods of secrecy, incomplete disclosures to the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, and intelligence assessments suggesting possible military dimensions. The memory of Iraq under Saddam Hussein, which secretly pursued a nuclear weapons program during the 1980s, and North Korea, which withdrew from the NPT and built nuclear bombs, has sharpened global wariness. Why is there such concern about Iran specifically? The Middle East is a region marked by deep-seated rivalries, historical conflicts, and fragile balances of power. Iran, with its large population, significant resources, and powerful military, is already a pivotal regional player. Its relationships with groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, and its involvement in conflicts in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, have led many of its neighbors to view Iran's intentions with suspicion. The prospect of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons raises the specter of a regional arms race. Other countries, like Saudi Arabia, might seek their own nuclear capabilities in response, undermining decades of non-proliferation efforts and increasing the risk of nuclear technology or materials falling into the wrong hands. Nuclear weapons, by their very nature, are immensely destructive. Their acquisition changes the calculus of both defense and diplomacy. Countries with nuclear weapons enjoy a level of deterrence. Others are less likely to attack, fearing catastrophic retaliation. But in a region as tense as the Middle East, deterrence could easily spiral into miscalculation. A single misunderstanding, a false alarm, or an act of terrorism could have consequences far beyond the region, potentially drawing in major world powers and destabilizing global security. The international community's approach to Iran's nuclear program has, for years, combined diplomacy, economic pressure, and at times, the threat of military action. The United Nations Security Council has passed multiple resolutions demanding that Iran halt certain nuclear activities. Economic sanctions, particularly those targeting Iran's vital oil exports and financial sector, have imposed significant costs on the country, aiming to persuade its leaders that the benefits of remaining non-nuclear outweigh the costs of defiance. At the heart of these efforts was the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, signed in 2015 between Iran and 6 world powers: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, China, and Germany. The agreement imposed strict limits on Iran's nuclear activities, reduced its stockpile of enriched uranium, and subjected its facilities to rigorous international inspections. In return, Iran received relief from many economic sanctions, opening the door to greater trade and investment. Supporters of the deal saw it as a model for peaceful non-proliferation, a demonstration that diplomacy and verification can address even the most challenging security issues. Critics, however, argued that the agreement had flaws. Some believed the restrictions were too limited in duration, or that Iran's missile program and regional activities should also have been addressed. Others worried that, once the deal's provisions expired, Iran could resume its nuclear pursuits with greater technical expertise. In 2018, the United States withdrew from the JCPOA and reimposed sanctions, leading Iran to gradually step back from its commitments. Since then, diplomatic efforts have continued, but the path forward remains uncertain. Beyond Iran and its neighbors, the world as a whole has a stake in preventing nuclear proliferation. Every new country that acquires nuclear weapons increases the risk that these weapons could be used, deliberately or accidentally, or that they could fall into the hands of terrorists or rogue actors. The more countries that possess nuclear weapons, the harder it becomes to maintain global security and prevent the spread of these technologies to others. Moreover, the issue is not just about the weapons themselves, but about the norms and rules that govern international behavior. Allowing Iran to acquire nuclear weapons would signal to other countries that the non-proliferation regime can be circumvented, potentially leading to a cascade of new nuclear states. This would make future arms control efforts more difficult and make the world a much more dangerous place. It's also important to recognize the human dimension. Ordinary people, in Iran and throughout the region, have borne the cost of sanctions, conflict, and uncertainty. The goal of preventing nuclear proliferation is not only to protect states, but to safeguard lives and ensure that future generations need not live under the shadow of nuclear war. In summary, the world's efforts to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons are rooted in a desire to uphold international norms, maintain regional stability, avoid a dangerous arms race, and reduce the risks of nuclear conflict. It is a complex challenge, requiring patience, diplomacy, and cooperation among nations with often divergent interests. The stakes could not be higher, and the consequences of failure would reverberate far beyond any one country or region. The quest for a peaceful and stable world, free from the threat of nuclear weapons, remains a goal worth pursuing, for Iran, for its neighbors, and for humanity as a whole.